Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to do a tier list of MCU movies, including Guardians 3. First off, there are 5 that I have not seen. One of them I probably will watch, but the rest of them, I don't really care. So, Captain Marvel, obviously, who gives a fuck about that agenda shit? Incredible Hulk, that's the one that I might watch sometime. It feels like, from what I've heard and what I've seen, it could be like a fun, like, kind of meh, like, how do they call it? Like outdated, kind of like summer, early 2000s movie. Like, I'm not saying outdated in a bad way, but just outdated in terms of maybe when I watch it, it'll make me think of being a kid again or something. Because I have a lot of memories of seeing these various movies in theaters, and so it kind of brings me back to being a kid at some points. And then Eternals, don't give a fuck about that shit. And then Shang-Chi, I was never going to watch that after, Iron Man, his arch nemesis is the Mandarin. And did they give Iron Man a movie with the real Mandarin? No. They put him in a Shang-Chi movie, and I just thought, that's a huge insult. That's just, it's like, it could have been fine, like, if Mandarin was in an Iron Man 4 and then they did a Shang-Chi movie with the Mandarin, but to have him in there and then Iron Man never gets to face off against his arch nemesis is just a joke. And then Black Widow, nobody cares about that. I mean, I've heard it has good eye candy in it, but I really don't care. Like, I don't even want to watch a movie if it, even if it has eye candy. If it's bad, it's bad. And I've heard that it's terrible. What they did with Taskmaster is unforgivable. And, why would I care anyways? I mean, she's dead, so who cares? So anyways, let's start off with Ant-Man 3. Let's just start off by giving that a fuck you. Complete disaster from start to finish. Not really anything good of note, except for the fact that, Paul Rudd is good. Michael Douglas is good. But the daughter is terrible. They recast her, and she's like Bugs Bunny the whole movie. She just has the same look on her face the whole movie. Kang was a disastrous, weak villain who, it really doesn't feel like this is the MCU's next biggest threat. And then it was just awful. It was so bad. I mean, the trailer looked like a completely different movie. And the trailer actually made me excited. Like, even though I don't even like Marvel anymore, I hate it. I think it's become, well, it pretty much, it almost always has been a disaster in some form. A lot of like little like, oh, why did you do that? Why did you do that to that character and to that story? But it's just gotten worse and worse because they realize they can get away with it. That's what I always say, is that once these people realize they can get away with doing these things, they're just going to apply it to everything because it's, it's laziness. They can just pump out stuff like they've been doing, pump out a bunch of shit. And this movie's just shit. Speaking of shit, Avengers Endgame, ugh. I'm going to put that in the D section. It doesn't deserve to be an F, but it doesn't deserve to be in anything higher than a D. I feel like I liked this movie a little bit when I saw it, but it's a disaster. I mean, this is not at all what the Infinity War saga should have been. This is not at all what the movie should have culminated in. I think the funniest thing about this movie is the fact that everything that it set up for the future has completely failed. Like everything. Like they're gonna have Valkyrie of all people be the queen of what was it, Asgard? And then what happens in Thor 4? Like, she just gets bodied in 2 seconds. She's just there to be a lesbian and to have shitty ass comic relief, and she gets destroyed. So it's like, that was kind of trash. And then Thor being one of the Guardians of the Galaxy, that was never even a story at all. So that was another thing that got fucked up. Captain America going back in time and having to encounter the Red Skull, that's never followed through. That's never followed up on. And then, what else? Loki getting away in Avengers Endgame. We all know what happens with him. Get the shittiest piece of shit Marvel thing that's ever been made. With the fucking, time police who apparently like commit genocide because you're not being a puppet in the timeline. So everything that Avengers 4 like set up is just all failed. And it's like, it's just kind of embarrassing that like they made this big movie and it was supposed to be like not only an ending but a beginning, and it's really not a beginning because they've just gone back on everything. Like they make all these on a whim decisions, and they're really bad decisions. And besides that, it has a ton of plot holes. It's boring. It's not anything of what could have been. And it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I give that an F. I'm going to put it above Ant-Man 3 because at least it's just kind of a joke movie. You know, I never finished this movie, but it's just kind of a joke. You know, like, it's just 2 hours of low-stakes trash story. Ant-Man makes jokes. The Wasp is there. I think they save the mom at the end or some stupid shit. Yeah, whatever. Avengers Infinity War, that's gonna... Avengers Infinity War is gonna be at the top of the Fs. This movie just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. This movie and Avengers Endgame, like, they just get worse and worse. Like, Infinity War is the equivalent of a bunch of different shits on a shit platter with a shit fucking ketchup and shit mustard on top. It's just complete trash. It's spectacle. It's loud, blockbuster, blah. It's just constant jokes through this intense story. Thanos is completely ruined from what he was in the comics. Tons and tons of plot conveniences. The worst thing, though, about this movie is the fact that the power scaling for these characters is a disaster. You can tell that they just kind of decide on a whim who has what level of power. They really don't stick to a consistent continuity of like which superhero has this amount of power versus this hero or villain. And so it just makes it a complete mess. And then it's not rewatchable. Like, I would never watch Infinity War again, unfortunately. You know, like, it's just totally... Like, that was that one movie I watched years ago, who cares now? Black Panther 1, I'm going to put it in the B's. I was entertained by this movie. You know, it is a mess. It's got a lot of problems. Killmonger killing off Ulysses S. Claw almost makes me want to put it in the C tier. But I really love the music in this movie. And I really loved Killmonger as a villain. And I just thought it was a fun movie. Like, it was a genuinely fun movie. It was kind of like... But at the same time, it was really disappointing because they made it to where all the women in this movie outshadowed Black Panther himself. And I really didn't like that, especially since the actor passed away now. You know, it would have been nice for him to at least have gotten this one badass movie. But the fact that Black Panther was at his best in Civil War, where he's just like in this small little appearance, is just kind of a shame. It's a shame, too, that, like, the Russo bros had Black Panther for Infinity War, and they wasted him there, too. And so I really feel like, in general, the MCU really fucked up Black Panther even before he passed away. Like, they were already messing with his character and turning him into trash. But this movie, I could watch it again, honestly. But it's really hard. It's definitely like a B minus. Maybe a B on a good day. Thor Ragnarok, that is an F. I am going to put it above Ant-Man 2 and below Infinity War. So, basically the story of Thor Ragnarok is that all these idiots complain that Thor was too serious and that he was like how he was in the comics. And so then Marvel hired Taika Waititi, of all people, to make a joke movie where everything is just a joke and it's just all crappy improv comedy mixed with like a Star Wars movie. And just the fact that this is Ragnarok, this is supposed to be the end of times, and the way that they treat it is just like a joke. I couldn't stand Valkyrie and her, you know, she drinks a lot of alcohol, and, you know, she thinks that she's cool because she acts like a man a little bit. And then I can't stand Thor in this movie, how he's just like a fucking walking joke. But I did like Hela as a villain. I thought she was very underutilized and underrated, and I liked Loki once again. But in general, it's just a joke. Spider-Man Homecoming. Oh, God. I'm going to put it below Thor 3, but above Ant-Man 2. So it's another F. This movie has so many issues that, you know, people forget. Like, they forget so much. They forget so quickly the stupid shit that Marvel does in their movies. They forget how, like, they, like, ripped off Ferris Bueller, and then they showed Ferris Bueller on a TV in the background. And, like, oh, that's really clever. Like, ripping off a movie and then showing it playing in the background. Like, you couldn't have just ripped it off without showing the movie. Like, it just feels like sometimes, like, the stuff that they do is just, like, so bad on not even, like, a Marvel level, but just, like, in a filmmaking level. Like, just imagine you're making a movie with, like, an homage to another movie, and then you play that movie in the background on a TV. I mean, what kind of person does that? It's like, that's stupid. It's like if you make, like a spaghetti recipe and you're pretending like it's your own, and then you're having the other person's spaghetti recipe right up there on the counter for people to read and see that you're just using that person's recipe. That's basically what it is. And not only that, because I realize that's a very small point, but Zendaya, they basically ripped off Allison in the Breakfast Club with her character. Spider-Man is not Spider-Man at all. He's just Iron Boy Jr. And then it's terrible. It's a terrible movie. The music is awful. You know, they basically use a bunch of songs that everyone's already heard like a million times. The only good thing about this movie is Vulture. Vulture, I thought, was a really good villain. Michael Keaton did a really good job. But everything else about this movie I hate and despise with a burning passion. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I'm going to put in the A tier. It's the first A. This movie is just so epic on so many levels. It has the perfect balance of darkness and light, happiness and sadness. The ending is really heartbreaking, and I gotta admit, out of all these MCU movies, Guardians 2 is the one that made me the most affected with the emotions at the end. And the action is awesome. I really love Kurt Russell as Ego the Living Planet. I thought he was a great villain. Although I do admit the CGI was pretty bad with him. You know, with where he is like... Didn't he have some sort of like a CGI jelly that he was spreading to Earth or something? Like, that looked really bad. But other than that, this movie is epic. Like, I love it so much. It's so much fun. The music is perfect. I felt like if this movie is this good, I can't wait to see how good Part 3 is. Because, wow. On every level. The only thing I didn't like also is that there was a lot of failed humor. You know, Drax the Destroyer. They just turned him into a joke in this movie. Where he's just laughing, like fucking Seth Rogen. And then I didn't like some of the repeated jokes over and over again. Like, they had this one joke about a yarrow root, like, this yarrow root isn't ripe or something. Like, they did that joke like 10 times. And it's like, how many times are people gonna joke about a vegetable or a root or whatever not being ripe? Like, that's just stupid. But regardless, I love the movie. I would totally watch it again. Doctor Strange 1, I'm going to put in the A tier. This movie really surprised me. I thought, you know, this is just going to be a lame origin movie, but it was a really well done origin superhero movie. I loved the arc of Benedict Cumberbatch's character. I really loved just how fun the movie was and how the villain was pretty good, although he wasn't the greatest. Caecilius, I think his name is. It just felt like a really good, solid, unique movie where, you know, we're going to start to see magic in the MCU, and this movie's kind of, you know, solely focusing on that. And I really love the MCU movies where they felt unique. You know, like, I hate these ones that just feel so cookie cutter and so much like they have a formula. I really prefer the ones like Doctor Strange, where it's like, yeah, there is a little bit of a formula, but at the same time, it's doing its own thing, you know? Not really. The only complaint I'll say is that Chiwetel Ejiofor, casting him as Baron Mordo was a how would you describe it? A mistake, a giant mistake. Like, he's terrible as Baron Mordo. And then he's built up to be a villain at the end, and then he's in the second one for like 2 minutes. So then Civil War, I'm going to put that in the A tier, above Doctor Strange, but below Guardians 2. This is another movie where you kind of have to overlook all the flaws, because on the surface level, it is a disaster. I mean, Captain Zemo's whole plan, the plot contrivances, it is really a disaster. And then just the way that they changed the story from Civil War, it was a big red flag as to what they were going to do with Infinity War. You know, it was a big like just a huge warning that, you know, they're probably not going to do a good job with Infinity War, which is funny because it's like, how is it that they did Civil War, which was a really good movie, and then they get to do Infinity War, but then that one guy, he does Ant-Man 3, and they're letting him do Avengers 5 and 6. Like, that is just such piss poor management that it's just like, it's laughable. But the thing is that even though Civil War is not what it should have been, it is a damn good movie. It is tons of fun. It's intense. I love the action sequences in this movie. The whole like airport scene is like a comic book come to life. I mean, it was just so good. And then Black Panther was amazing in this movie. Spider-Man, this is the only movie in the entire MCU where I think Spider-Man is in the movie. Like, I think that based on this movie, I was really excited for Spider-Man Homecoming and, you know, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, but then they made trash. So, you know, who cares? I also think that Civil War is the most rewatchable. I've rewatched Civil War more times than any other movie in the MCU. That's how much fun I had. Oh, God. Next up, Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever. Let's just put that at the very end, at the bottom of the F tier. Wow. I mean, it's not a Black Panther movie, that's for damn sure. They plagiarized Thor: The Dark World, where they have, like, Wakanda being invaded, and then the mom gets killed. Like, they did the exact same thing in Thor: The Dark World, but since people didn't like Thor: The Dark World, they don't really care that they plagiarized it. And then they tokenized Namor. They turned him into a piece of trash villain. Just everything about this movie is the worst thing I've ever seen. It's definitely like, I think it is either number 1 or number 2 at being the worst superhero movie I've ever seen. Worst comic book movie as well. Riri Williams is awful. You know, Token Iron Man. She is just the worst. She's a terrible character. I hate this movie. I hate it so much that words can't describe how much I hate this movie. They shouldn't have killed Black Panther off. They should have recasted T'Challa, but they didn't, so they failed. And it was 3 hours of trash. And it's just like, what a disgrace this movie is. Like, what an absolute disgrace. I have no good things to say about this movie. I really wish that I didn't watch it, but I wanted to see if I could get some views. And so, every video I do is like a gamble. And so, I have to take a lot of chances and just, watch things even though I don't want to watch them, because then maybe I'll get more viewers. Ant-Man 1. A lot of people, now that Ant-Man 3 came out, a lot of people are pretending like this was a great movie. I'm not going to say that. I am going to put this in the C tier. This is the definition of a C tier Marvel movie. It's completely formulaic. I hate how Edgar Wright was wanting to do this movie his way, and then he left whatever for creative differences because they ruined it. They turned it into a joke. The villain in this movie is a cartoon. There are a lot of good things though. Like, I really loved Lewis. I loved him in the movie. He was really funny. I really loved Paul Rudd, obviously. I really loved Michael Douglas. And this is the only movie in the MCU where I really liked the Wasp. Evangeline Lilly. I really liked her and Paul Rudd in this movie together. I thought that, based on this movie, I was really excited to see more of them as a couple. And honestly, I used to watch this animated Avengers show, and I really liked the Wasp in that show. And I think it's a shame that the Wasp, her character is such trash now. They really ruined her character, which is weird because you'd think with this MCU, you'd think that they would improve on her character, but no. Avengers Age of Ultron, that is another C. I am putting it below, that's tough. I'm putting it below Ant-Man because this movie is really convoluted. The trailer was better than the actual movie. I mean, the Hulkbuster stuff in the trailer and, Ultron in the trailer, everything in the trailer just made this movie look like it was going to be a dark masterpiece. But then you watch the movie and it's just a big joke. There are a lot of good things. I really loved Hawkeye in this movie. I really loved his speech at the end where he was saying that, we're all afraid out here while we're fighting. I really loved some other stuff in the movie. I love this Civil War teaser scene where they're chopping wood. Other than that though, it's a disaster. Ultron is a joke. Completely destroyed that character. It's a mess. It's a real mess of a movie. I think that though that it is a lot better than parts 3 and 4, that's for sure. I would also say that you can tell that there was behind the scenes drama. You can tell that, he was forced to put all these teasers to other movies. So they had all these weird teaser scenes that didn't need to be in there at all. They could have just been post-credit scenes. But overall, it's mediocre. Ant-Man is better because it's more focused. Guardians of the Galaxy 1. I'm going to put it as a C above Avengers 2. I'm not very much of a fan of this movie. I think that it's a little kiddish for me. But it's a fun kids movie. I just wish it was more adult. The second one. I also really didn't like the villain. Captain America the Winter Soldier. I'm going to put that as an A above Civil War. I really like this movie. You know, it is a very solid, like, thriller, political thriller, spy thriller, superhero movie. The problem is that I think that this is probably one of the least rewatchable MCU movies because it's just another one of those movies where you've seen it once, maybe twice, and that's it. You know, that's all you need to see. It is a great story, though, of Captain America going against his government and the arc that he goes through. I really love Black Widow in this movie. I loved Nick Fury and Falcon back when he was Falcon. So yeah, it's a pretty good movie, gotta say. Thor: The Dark World, I'm putting it as a B above Black Panther. People forget that how good this movie is at some points, you know. Unfortunately, you do have Jane Foster, and she is awful. You know, she is like a stick in the mud. And then Malekith, the villain, is probably one of the worst MCU villains of all time. However, this was like a Loki movie. Like, Loki stole the show. And there was so much Loki goodness in this movie. Thor's mom's death was really powerful and emotional. It actually worked, unlike in Black Panther 2 when they ripped it off. And I like Thor in the movie too. I prefer it when he's serious like he is in the comics. So, you know, I just think too that it has good action as well. Very good action sequences at some points. But yeah, there are a lot of problems with the movie. I just think that it is really underrated. Like, people just focus on like the couple little things and then they just don't even talk about like all the other stuff in the movie, how good it is. It's like, yeah, I get it. Jane Foster sucks. Her stupid friends suck too, you know. But everything else is pretty good. Iron Man 3. I'm going to put that below Spider-Man Homecoming in the F tier. As I said before, I felt like I was duped with this movie. It felt like a prank. I was expecting to see the Mandarin. The trailer for this movie was awesome. It looked like a really, really good movie. And I'll never forgive them for what they did with Mandarin. They could have done it with their own villain. You know, they could have made up a villain. But no, they purposefully chose Iron Man's arch nemesis for his third movie. And you're thinking, oh, this is going to be epic. It's his third movie. Going to have his arch nemesis. No, we're going to have this nerdy 1990s character. And also, too, originally they wanted to have this girl as the villain, who's like Iron Man's former love interest. And I thought she was a really good villain. I thought she would have been a much better villain. So, you see, like, they could have done that even though they didn't want them to. And it would have been so much better. The first Avengers movie I put is an A. Right at the end, below all the other stuff I already talked about. So, this is like the ultimate like comic book kid movie, like where you watch it and you just feel like a kid again. I'll never forget like eating chicken lo mein and watching this movie and just feeling like I am in a comic book. The characters are great. I love the little scene where the Avengers face off against each other in the forest. Loki is probably the best villain ever, or the second best villain. He is really dark in this movie, and I really love him in this movie. It's a crowd pleaser, too. I mean, Joss Whedon, he is really good at finales. He is really good at the culmination of all these random events coming together, and he proves that with this movie. I mean, this movie is the ultimate culmination movie. The only problem for me is there's like a 30-minute sequence where the helicarrier is going to crash, and they got to fix the helicarrier. It's pretty hilarious and dumb and kind of like weak. But other than that, like, I really like this movie. Captain America: The First Avenger. I give this a C. I put it at the top of the C's. You know, this movie, I was really excited about it based on the trailer. But it was just really average for me. Like, it was really short, too. Like, it felt really rushed and really, like, you know, boom, boom, boom. I was really expecting a lot more. And I was really excited, too, about seeing, like, Captain America in the army fighting Nazis. But it was meh. Like, it was just straight up meh. Thor 1, I am going to put as a B. I'm going to put it at the top of the B's. This is another underrated one in the Marvel movie series. I really felt like they nailed the characters perfectly in this movie. I loved the sort of Shakespearean route that the guy who made this movie was trying to do. And yeah, I just felt like it was a pretty decent superhero origin movie. It wasn't the greatest, like, it could have been a lot better. You know, it was pretty flat and dull in some instances, but the rest of the movie is really, really good. Like, I really love the action in this movie, too. Not sure what else to say about it, though. Iron Man 2. I'm going to put this movie as a D above Avengers Endgame. This movie, like, when I first saw it with my brother years ago, I fell asleep watching it. It is kind of a snooze fest. However, it's okay. Like, I could throw it on if I was desperate for, like, an Iron Man movie. I really love Black Widow in the movie. I think that this movie and the first Avengers are her best appearances in the MCU, along with Winter Soldier. Other than that, Thor: Love and Thunder, ugh. I'm going to put that as an F right above Ant-Man 3. This movie is an insult to superhero movies. It's an insult to the comic books. It is just the worst, one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's just a joke. It's just a complete joke, and even though I knew this movie was going to be bad, my expectations were still too high. And then the fact that the Guardians just come and go. Terrible. Iron Man 1, I put in the A tier. I'm going to put it above Doctor Strange. This is a really, really solid movie in general. Even taking away superhero movie status. The casting is perfect. It's a great little story. It's a personalized story. It's not like Jeff Bridges wants to take over the universe. And it's a really powerful and strong motivational movie. Like, you really feel motivated to do things after watching this movie. And you know, superhero movies, they're kind of supposed to do that. And this movie actually does that. You know, it just doesn't tell a formulaic trash story like all the other ones, pretty much. You know, it actually makes you want to be a superhero. So I think that that's really, really unique about the movie. As well, when watching this movie, like, I really wish that all the other MCU movies were like this movie instead, because it just has like such a perfect feel for like a comic book movie. You know, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it just feels like perfect. And like, if all the other movies modeled themselves after this movie instead of Guardians of the Galaxy, then the MCU would have been in a much better place right now. You know, Guardians, people forget, like, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of destroyed the MCU. Because once it came out, they decided, we gotta make all the other movies comedic and like a joke. Like, that was the moment that the formula was created. Doctor Strange 2, this is a D. I'm putting it below Avengers Endgame. Ugh. This movie should have been a Wanda movie. And they even admitted that this was supposed to be a Wanda movie, and then Doctor Strange was supposed to have his own movie where he faced off against Nightmare and Baron Mordo. But then they ruined that, and they rewrote this movie like 33 times. And yeah, you can tell. It's just typical, like, studio-made trash. It's just like a big mess. Not really anything good to say about it anymore. Like, now that time has passed, I'm like, yeah, F that movie. Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm putting that at the top of the D's. You know, I know. Tobey was really good. Andrew Garfield was really good. Green Goblin was really good. Doc Ock was really good. Okay, what about everything else? Next up is Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm going to put this one actually at the top of the C's. I felt like this was a huge improvement on the first one. I really liked how the story was like how Spider-Man was supposed to be Spider-Man and not live under Iron Man's shadow. I really loved Mysterio, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. In general, I just felt like, they actually did listen to feedback, and they improved on it. And, they even tried to improve Zendaya. And it's like, instead of being Allison from The Breakfast Club, she's generic true crime fan. So yeah, I think that this is definitely the best of Tom Holland's trash trilogy in terms of being like a Spider-Man movie, but it's still not good. Lastly is Guardians 3. This movie is a disaster. However, it is an entertaining movie. Like, I feel like I could just put this movie on randomly and totally enjoy it more than, like Captain America 1, Ant-Man. Like, this movie is just pure entertainment and pure, like, old school, like, here's a movie, here's characters going on an adventure. There are a ton of problems, though. However, I am putting this at the top of the B's. It felt like a very strange conclusion for Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, it really didn't feel like a conclusion to their series at all. Um, but the one thing that I really loved about this movie was that they finally like really made Star-Lord the star that he deserved to be. Like, I really loved how much he stood out in this movie, and how, he's been the leader this whole trilogy, but I really felt like in this movie he showed the most strength as a leader in the stuff that he did in trying to save Rocket Raccoon. The only issue I'll say that, really sticks out for me is the villain. The villain was really, really good in terms of acting, but there's a part in the movie where, you should have had a boss battle, and it just wasn't very much of a boss battle. Like, I think the boss battle in Ant-Man 1 was more of a fight than the one in Guardians 3. But in general, that's not really ruining it. But I would still recommend it, like, I don't know, like, I just had a fun time with it. I really enjoyed it, just in terms of being a movie. Like, I can't, like, say that it's bad, like Spider-Man No Way Home, or Black Panther 2. But at the same time, like, I'm just putting it as a B. So anyways, that is my MCU tier list updated. I hope that you guys like it. I know that a lot of people will be like, "Nyeh." But whatever. I mean, it's my opinion. I don't really care. Like, it's the MCU. Like, it's all a bunch of trash. Like, they doomed themselves as soon as they stopped following the comics and started acting like, what we do is better than the comics. That was the moment when the MCU was destroyed, because this whole movie series is built on comics. It's all built on other people's work. And if you take other people's work and you ruin it, and you gender swap, race swap, destroy stories like Infinity War, Civil War, it's just not a good look. Like, it's like, okay, you've made some weird fan fiction, like multi-million-dollar fan fiction, but you didn't really make the comics. That's why I think the A tier, all the movies in the A tier really did make the comics, though. So that's why I have all the movies in the A tier because they really did feel like they were faithful to the comics. So please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of the tier list, and then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.